This is Sawyer Robertson, and you're listening to the Bearcast on SicEm365.com.
Welcome into the Bearcast on SicEm365.com. I'm your host, Grayson Grundhoefer. I'm here with Colt Barber. Today we are presented by WellMed Medical Management and Barefoot Campus Outfitter. Head over to Barefoot in Waco or go to the website and use the code SicEm365 to save 15% off your purchase. Colt, today we are going to be previewing Baylor versus Oklahoma State. On the road in Stillwater, the Bears go. They're a 20.5-point favorite heading into this game. Just a massive favorite. This is, this is kind of parallel to, you don't see lines like this really in the Big 12, at all. And so it really just brings me back to the point of just thinking about this Oklahoma State team. And I just hope people recognize just how bad they are. This is a team that is, in my eyes, on a similar level as, some of those Kansas teams in the past, like the better, really bad ones, if that makes sense. Because they had some that were just it's horrific, but they had others who their only win during the season was beating Nicholls State, 34-10 or whatnot, and then going 1-11 the rest of the way. I could see something similar happening to this Oklahoma State team based on their talent. And of course, the fact that now Mike Gundy is out as the head coach there.
Yeah. And truthfully, for their outlook, it makes you wonder, even if Haas Haney gets healthy, what he decides to do. And does he try to come back and play the season? For a guy that's young, that's probably trying to preserve his eligibility, he might just ride that out and try to get a medical red shirt. That's an unfortunate reality for them, and that's kind of their upside for this year is if he does come back. But yeah, this Oklahoma State team's not very good. And I mentioned it before, I really hate it for Oklahoma State. It's such a long-standing program in the Big 12, and when you start losing Texas and Oklahoma and obviously Texas A&M, all the schools back to where the origination of the Big 12, the Big 12 needs Oklahoma State and that reputation to withstand. And unfortunately, right now, they're not in that situation. And it just helps to elevate the Big 12 in general. So I hate it for Oklahoma State. I hate it for the Big 12. And truly, I hate it for Mike Gundy because of what he was able to do there. Doesn't sound like he's ready to get out of coaching, but obviously he's not helping on the sidelines this weekend.
So just kind of reiterating how bad I think Oklahoma State is this season. And I'm not trying to just dog on them, but it's just the way the stats are and the way things have played out so far this year. I think we've talked a lot about how other teams in the Big 12 have beaten up on lesser opponents, and Baylor hasn't really gotten the opportunity to do that. This week they do, and there's really no excuse for this game being competitive. And if you go through kind of the other teams that I find comparable, or at least somewhat comparable to Oklahoma State, I look at North Carolina, who TCU beat 48-14, UCF beat 34-9. I look at Oregon State, who Texas Tech beat 45-14. I look at UCLA, who Utah beat 43-10. Stanford, who BYU beat 27-3. Like, those type of matchups are the comparable ones, and the Big 12 teams have risen to the occasion more times than not and really put it on those bad teams. And Oklahoma State, when you look at their numbers, they are very comparable to the worst teams in the Power Four. It's Oklahoma State, UCLA, Virginia Tech, Northwestern, Stanford, North Carolina. Those are the worst teams in the Power Four. And Oklahoma State, their numbers probably put them at dead last. Like, if you just look at the bare minimum of numbers, they did have to play Oregon, which is tough. But, they have the worst offense-adjusted EPA per play in the entire Power Four. They have the second worst defensive-adjusted EPA per play, ahead of only Virginia Tech. This team lost to Oregon by 66 and lost to a 2-2 Tulsa team at home by 7. This is a very bad football team.
Yeah, and obviously the Oregon game, I don't know what the final score was, 69-3. And you look at that game and how much has changed. And not to compare Baylor and Oregon, but that spread was 28.5 for Oklahoma State on the road at Autzen Stadium, and the over/under was 55.5. Now you look at Baylor, and there is a 20.5 point, and Baylor's on the road. So Oklahoma State's perception and reality are very much the same. Like, they have fallen off a cliff right now, and I know there's concerns, and rightfully so. Like, you go in, you're expecting to play well. You should beat up on this team. You can't have a letdown. I don't expect Baylor to lose, but a letdown is just like, it's a 30-20 type game where it should never be that close. I mean, Tulsa just ran for 200 plus yards on Oklahoma State's defensive front. Like Baylor should go in there, and like if you go in and have a control the game running the football, you might end up with something like a 30-7 score, but how that feels is much different than a 30-20 game where they're just moving the ball up and down the field. And Oklahoma State's not good. And Baylor needs to get right in this game for a lot of reasons. But like you said, primarily it's like Baylor really doesn't have that baseline yet of what are you going to do when you play a team that you're more talented in or equally talented. They're not equally talented, Oklahoma State. They're more talented. But this is a bad team that you need to go in and beat badly. And I don't care if it's on the road or not. Like they need to do that. And we kind of find out in a way more about Baylor this weekend, more than we did against Samford, and probably not more than like SMU. Like I think I don't know. That's a tough, like you're not going to learn more from this game than you did the SMU game or the Auburn game in some ways, but you do learn about how focused and what is the mentality of this team in this particular game.
Real quick, Sawyer Robertson has something to remind you about.
Want the latest information about your favorite team? Try out Sigum 365 premium content the next 3 months for just $5 by clicking the link below.
And now back to the Bearcast. Right, and you're facing a team that's really not playing for anything. Like they're not playing for Gundy. Like he got fired. So that there's not really any motivation on that side, and there should be a lot of motivation on the Baylor side, which leads you to thinking, oh, well, what if they, get nervous, or what if they just, have these high expectations for this game and don't meet them, and then things start collapsing? Well, it's kind of too late in the season for that. Like Baylor's had enough tough opportunities and tough matchups. They've already gone on the road. They beat SMU. This should not be a game where, they have a bunch of miscues like the Samford game, where it's like you can't get on track for an extended period. That should not be happening. This is a week to clean things up and clear some things up. I will also say there is pressure here, though, because a loss.
Yeah.
I don't think you come back from a loss in this game, because then you're going to be predicted to pretty much lose every game the rest of the way on the schedule, most likely. Yeah. And so that's a utter collapse. You cannot lose this game. This would be the worst loss imaginable. This is a worse loss in my eyes than like 2023 Texas State because of the team that you have assembled.
Yeah. Well, that Texas State team, in my mind, would have beaten Tulsa, who just beat Oklahoma State. Like that Texas State team probably beats the Texas State team this year beats this Oklahoma State team. So like there's no comparison. That team, Texas State team, would have beat this Oklahoma State team. So there's no comparison in this particular, in my mind, that would be absolutely a worse loss than that. But yeah, I don't want to harp on that too much about how bad Oklahoma State is, because Baylor needs to go out and do what they need to do. They need to go out and be focused, figure out how to run the football. And if you're not running over 250 yards in this game, pushing 300, like Oregon rushed for over 300 with relative ease. And Baylor's offense isn't Oregon, but it's at least within the same stratosphere, and definitely in the same stratosphere as what Tulsa is. They're far exceeds that. So you need to go out in this particular game, get Bryson Washington going, probably get Caden Knighton for the first time really going, probably get Michael Turner and probably Joseph Dodd some carries. So like Baylor should go out and control this game. And Oklahoma State did a decent job watching that film against Tulsa of like having contact at the line of scrimmage, but Baylor should move the line a lot more, and they should finish through contact, whatever it might be. When you watch that Oregon game, I mean, there weren't guys touching any Oregon running backs 10 or 15 yards down the field. And that kind of sets the expectation for this game. I don't think Baylor obviously is that talented offensively as what Oregon runs out there, but they have the ability to put up a lot of yards in this game.
Yeah, they're nowhere near as talented as Oregon, but yes,
which a lot of people aren't.
Pieces. Yeah, right. But they do have the pieces to attack them. I think the biggest thing, and where I want to start with this, Cole, I mentioned some of the other teams in the Big 12 and what they've done to similar level competition. I mean, let's just be real. I mean, they've taken care of business for the most part. The only team that hasn't taken care of business is like Kansas State losing to Army, West Virginia losing to Ohio, and truthfully, I think those two teams probably beat Oklahoma State right now, based on what we've seen so far this year. But like BYU going to East Carolina and beating them by 21, like I think ECU might be better than Oklahoma State. So I think my overall thing that I'm looking at here is, and it's the top of my mind, can this team put together a complete and dominant football game? Can they do it? Can they do it just once? Can they do it? Can they finally get some sort of rhythm? Can they put it all together? That's what this week should be about, because you're not going to have another opportunity like this the rest of the way. They kind of squandered that opportunity against Samford because of just how bad the second half was. They really had a chance to pile it on. They didn't. Now you have a chance here to really have that killer instinct, to really go in there and be the better team, and then actually show that you're convincingly the better team. It would help with all kinds of advanced metrics. I think it would get people to at least take a step back for a week, knowing that there's a long season left. But if you go out here and you don't play well, it's just going to add another bullet point. It's going to add another talking point, another layer to just all the conversations that have been talked about. And really, if they don't play well this week, it's going to add a lot of doubt in a lot of people's minds, including my mind, about what this team can actually be this year, because you're not going to get another opportunity like this. And if you aren't able to go out there and really assert yourself and dominate and have that kind of complete performance, then you're probably not going to have it in a single game the rest of the way.
Yeah. You mentioned kind of the comparisons, and this is going through Baylor's schedule, and it's F+. So this is S&P plus or SP plus, which is the ESPN metric with Bill Connolly, and FEI combined. So I don't really know how they mesh these together, but it's actually a really good reference point. I knew it was there, and I kind of forgot about it until I kind of compiled these before this podcast. But F+ offense, F+ defense, and F+ special teams. The only opponent Baylor will face this year, the remainder of this year, excluding Samford, is Oklahoma State, and they all, when you consider categories worse, 60th in the country or below. They're 65th in special teams, 96th in defense, and 83rd in offense. The only other team comparable, and it's not even really a comparison in my mind, is Houston, which is 76th in offense, 32nd in defense, and 74th in special teams.
Yeah, it's not comparable.
And it's the only one. There's two of the three is lower than 65th, and that's the only reason I'm even discussing it. And we know that the steps forward that Houston's taken, I would say offensively, and how good they can be potentially defensively. So there's no comparison. And Baylor's, this is an opportunity to go out and do something they need to do. Because last year, you look at the Oklahoma State team, they still had Alan Bowman, they had the Presley kid, they had Ollie Gordon, they had some guys on defense that played, but they don't have those guys that could go in and make games competitive. Like, they don't have a difference maker at really any level. And that's really intriguing. Like, considering everything that Mike Gundy did there to have a roster like this, which Haas Haney was that a little bit. But outside of that, I don't watch any of their games and just think, man, they have a guy that can go out there and really scare you. And that's just, for being Oklahoma State, that's really surprising. Regardless of NIL, regardless about the trajectory they're on, they don't really have any of those guys right now.
Absolutely. All right, let's look at the Oklahoma State run defense really quick, because I think this is the area both you and I have talked about extensively from last week, because we both felt like Baylor should have ran the ball more against Arizona State. But we've also looked around and noticed, Baylor hasn't ran the ball well this year. Tough competition, sure. But they just haven't. They haven't really gotten it all going. Even against Samford, there were some struggles. But you look at Oklahoma State this week, and it provides another really good opportunity for Baylor to run the football. Former Baylor Bear Dominic Richardson just absolutely torched them for 146 yards for Tulsa this past week. They allowed 312 yards to Oregon on the ground. UT Martin ran for 3.1 yards per carry, and that included 4 sacks that Oklahoma State had, so it would have been higher than that. They're allowing 215 rushing yards per game and 5.5 yards per carry. They are really, really bad in the run defense area. But you look at Baylor, and Baylor's 15th in the Big 12 in rushing yards per game and 92nd in the nation. Something has to give here. But in my eyes, Baylor should run the football 35 to 40 times in this game, control things up front, and have a big day for Bryson Washington and the rest of their running backs. That should be the expectation, but we haven't seen it so far this year. They've been one of the worst rushing football teams in the Big 12 and in the Power 4, but I know the competition has been very tough. I understand.
Yeah, I mean, I think, we discussed this a lot last year, and how against teams that are going to present different numbers or prevent different challenges, Auburn's a legit rushing defense. I mean, we saw what they did against Oklahoma. Arizona State was the best rushing defense in the Big 12 last year. SMU, despite what they lost, they're a decent rushing defense. So I think you go to the Arizona State game last week and you just say, why the heck did Bryson Washington not have more carries? He was averaging every single quarter. He was averaging like 5+ yards per carry. He finally broke off the long one in the fourth quarter, but he was getting 3 carries a quarter, 4 carries a quarter. Not a lot of what you want to see. they just have to go and commit to doing it. And I know that the game plan wise last week against Arizona State, they wanted to use a screen game. Well, this isn't a time where you're going to have to go out and use a screen game. You go out and run the football. We remember the game with Dawson Pendergrass last year, Bryson Washington, but it was Dawson who had the really big game, the really big game. Wasn't he like 150 yards or something in that game?
I mean, they all had a huge game. But
yeah.
Yes, he had the big one.
And so, you go into this game, nothing changed with your offensive line. Oklahoma State is at least on par or worse than what they were, by far worse personnel-wise. Statistically, Oregon was the only Power 4 team to play, and they just destroyed them rushing the football. But Baylor should go out in this game and say, our game plan is to run the football until you say not. I'm not worried about the passing game right now. I think you can hit some play action stuff with Sawyer to keep those numbers and keep the defense honest. But if your game plan is not to go out and just crush them on the ground, I think you're making a mistake. You have to get this run game going a lot like Baylor did after the bye week last year going into the Tech game. When they finally got that going, then it opened up so much. And I think they're about to hit a stretch that's a little bit more favorable than what they were to begin the season.
And for those keeping track at home, Baylor ran for 343 yards and 9 yards per carry in Waco last year. Yet somehow that game was a 10-point game. Just pretty baffling that game was even close by the end of it. All right, so we kind of look a little bit deeper into this Oklahoma State team. Offensively, this is where they're bad on both ends. Don't get me wrong. But offensively, man, oh man, have they been bad. Haas Haney got hurt in the first quarter of their game against UT Martin late in the first quarter. They had scored 2 touchdowns during that time period. So in the last 11 quarters, they have scored a total of 2 touchdowns with Zane Flores at quarterback. And that's a matchup against Oregon, but it's also 3 quarters against UT Martin and also 4 quarters against Tulsa. And they haven't done anything. Flores is completing just 57% of his passes, has 2 interceptions, no touchdowns. He's got 58 yards rushing, so not a great runner either. He's okay in that regard, but not great. In general, though, I mean, they're 13th in the Big 12 in rushing offense, last in pass offense by a lot, and last in scoring offense. They've just been so bad. And you look around at their team, and it's like, who are the playmakers here? They don't have any playmakers on offense. Like, there's no one that really stands out when you watch their tape or their film. They're going to run the ball with Rodney Fields. They got a couple guys that they, throw the ball to more than others, but no one has really stood out so far for them in the early going. And I think that's been a huge challenge for them on the offensive side.
Yeah, I mean, it's bad. You look at their explosive rush rate, and it's worse than the Big 12. Their explosive pass rate, 13th, I believe. And I'm assuming a lot of this came with the Haas Haney. Like, they might have had 3 of those, and it came against there, but it's not good. I watched the Tulsa game, just curious, like, what did their offense look like? And Tulsa truly just disrupted their offensive line the majority of the game. They were in the backfield regular, maybe not making tackles and making plays, but they were winning on one-on-one matchups, and that was just staggering to me. Baylor's defensive line their linebackers might not have a lot of sacks, because I don't think Meacham's going to go into this game and just leave his quarterback hanging out to dry. He's going to get the ball out of his hands. So you might not see all these tackles. You're probably not going to see a lot of sacks. You're hopefully going to see quite a few tackles for loss in this game, and really disruptive, where Baylor really had those chances these first parts of the season. But yeah, it's a matchup where you expect Baylor's defense to dominate. I really would be excited for Jackie Marshall to have a big game in this one. The linebackers to get plenty of reps, and you hate to say you're treating it like a practice, but like, you better go out there and be, really focused in this game and dominate this game defensively, because they're not going to do a ton to challenge you. And I don't think we're going to see a ton of drop back passing either. Like, it's going to be quick game, the run game, and really, I don't know why Meacham would have any other mindset than protecting his guys at this juncture, because they're just not very good, and that's kind of a scary situation to be in.
It is. I mean, you look at what they've done so far on the offensive side, and there's really no reason to think that Oklahoma State should score more than, 13 points, 14 points.
Depending on how many Baylor, depending on what Baylor's doing offensively, like, if you're in that range, that could be a lot.
Yeah, it might be, like, based on what they've done so far, but I really think the expectation is they shouldn't score more than 2 touchdowns, at all. It really should not be. I mean, it shouldn't even be 2 touchdowns. It should be like under 10 points based on what they've done so far this year. But that's the kind of level of team we're talking about right now. And that is crazy, because during my entire time growing up, Oklahoma State has always been really good, especially on offense. Like you could count on them scoring a lot of points. That is not the case this year. They really don't do anything well on offense. I mean, they're 11th in third down conversions. They're last in red zone touchdown offense. Their offensive line is bad outside of their right tackle, who's pretty good. The rest of their offensive line is just not good at all. Like I mentioned, their receivers, my goodness, just watching them play, I'm like, no wonder Zane Flores hasn't done anything like that. There's just not a lot of explosivity there. And that makes it really, really tough. So moving to the defensive side, I do think they are a little bit better on defense. Like I see a couple guys that I'm like, okay, I think they're a decent player. Their defensive end, Jaleel Johnson, I think is their best player on the team. They have an edge defender in Wendell Gregory, who's been their most productive in their early going, even though he's been inconsistent. But those two guys have 19 pressures, 6 quarterback hits, 3 sacks. So they're pretty disruptive. They have a big nose tackle in Demarion Thomas. That's kind of their defensive line. They just don't have a lot of depth. Like they have those 3 guys. They're pretty good. They can do some things, create some havoc at times. But again, I think their main thing is they're playing well when the other team is behind the chains. But if you're able to run the football on them, slow them down a little bit, that's really where things start crumbling for their defense, because I do think they're stronger up front than they are on the back end.
Yeah. And I mean, like we said, to start this off, Baylor has to go out and plan to run the football. And those guys might be their better players, but you have to be able to impose your will at this juncture. Like I think that will be the most encouraging thing from this game, other than the defense throwing a shutout. If Baylor can go and rush for 300 yards and just control the clock, I think that's going to give you your most confidence coming out of this game, along with the defense playing well. I'm not worried about the pass game, still not. Even through the last 2 weeks, I think it's just part of the teams that you're facing, what they were trying to do, Arizona State specifically. You have to go out and establish a run, because if you go and you struggle running the ball in this game, that's a really bad sign. And I don't think Mason Miller is going to let that offensive line happen to the offensive line. And I don't think those guys on the offensive line, the 4 returners and plus Caden Siraki, are going to let that happen. I think they're going to go out with a mindset to run the football. And they did a good job of it last week in limited chances. They just didn't run the ball enough. So I'm really anxious to see this game plan and how Baylor attacks it, because if there's something that you need to work on this week, it's run the football. And there's no better time. There's not going to be another chance to go out there against a live opponent in not a hostile, but not a favorable, home field advantage type setting to run it and do it. And they missed that chance against Samford, and now they have a chance to go out and do it. And that sounds crazy. I'm like trying to not keep saying that, but like Oklahoma State's just not good. And you don't get these opportunities very often.
No, Baylor's not going to get another opportunity like this. I firmly believe this is the worst team in the Big 12. And I don't know that it's all that close either. Moving on to their other positions, linebackers, they're okay. Brian McCoy, Brandon Rawls, they're fine, but not really special. And then the secondary is just kind of a disaster. They don't have any playmakers. They don't have a lot of guys that are, just strong against the run. They don't have a lot of guys that are strong against the pass. They're just really susceptible back there. And so I think some of what they do is they're protecting their secondary a little bit. And I think that has really hurt their run defense. And that's saying one thing. I also think just Oregon's going to inflate anyone's stats if you don't come out and play well. Like they just got slaughtered in that game. But against Tulsa, you saw it again. And it got better in the second half against Tulsa. But the first half, they didn't have an answer to stop anything against Tulsa. I mean, Tulsa was moving up and down the field in that first half. I mean, it was big drive after big drive. And so very interested to see how that goes in this game. Right now, Oklahoma State is last in the Big 12 in run defense by a lot at 211 yards. But again, they gave up over 300 to Oregon, so that inflates things, even though I still do think they have the worst run defense in the league. 14th in pass defense, so a little better, but still not good. They're last in scoring defense. They're also last in sacks allowed. Or last in sacks as a defense. They're last in the Big 12 in that area. So there's nothing that I've seen on tape or that I've seen through the stats that's really stood out to me about, okay, they're going to present this challenge to Baylor. I think it's more about, what's Baylor going to do in this game? What's going to be their scheme and their decision here? Are they going to run the football? Or are they going to do what they've done a lot this year and throw the football a ton? Is that just kind of who this team is? I think that's going to be a little bit of a question and something that, I think we know the answer based on last year that they want to run the football. They're going to run the football. But just because we haven't seen it really so far this year does make it a little up in the air because we know how much they trust Sawyer.
Yeah, I mean, 17 carries for Bryson last week. They had 6.5 yards per carry. It was inflated by that long run late, but like I said, he was consistently 5, 6, 7 yards until he busted that. And so is it you don't have Dawson, so you're gonna get Bryson his, but then you just don't, in those situations that you typically giving the ball to Dawson, you're giving it to the receiver or you're throwing a screen. Like, is that the reasoning for it? Because I think you still have to respect Baylor's rush game. Like, I don't think Arizona State and Auburn specifically just said, oh, we don't respect this, because I think they almost overly respected it. So now how does a team like Oklahoma State play Baylor? And if they present heavy numbers, does that force Baylor from running the football? Like, I don't think Baylor can be scared in this game to run the football. Like, they need to go out and know that they have a little bit of leeway because of Oklahoma State's offense to establish their will, even if it is heavy boxes. Like, match up. Like, if they have 7 guys in the box and that's what they're going to try to eliminate first, match up. Bring 2 tight ends and see what you use those sets in this situation and work on that. Does Jake Spavital do that? I don't know. I don't know what the ultimate game plan is, but I think you're right. There's a question mark of what does this team want to be offensively for the rest of the season? If they go into this game and they're not running the football, then we get a pretty quick question. Like, I would expect 40 plus rushes in this game based on today and how I'm feeling. But if that does not happen, then maybe they're just saying, hey, we're good enough passing the football that we don't really have to run the ball consistently. It would be disappointing for me if that were the case.
And maybe they're just, like you said, not trusting their young running backs. I mean, in fairness, they have 2 true freshmen and a redshirt freshman who's coming back from a season-ending injury. So they don't have a lot of options at running back with Dawson gone. I think that it is, and I've mentioned this a few times, and I know it because of how this season has gone so far, there's a lot of panic on Dawson not being there. And I think we knew they were going to miss Dawson in spots, especially against physical run defenses. Like, you need his frame, you need his power. But I do think in certain matchups, and this might be one where they can actually win up front and create creases. I do think that favors Caden Knighton's ability a little bit. He just has got to get downhill. Like, he has got to just put his foot in the ground and go, because too many times is a spin move or a stutter step. It's just,
well, he's giving up yards.
Right.
Yeah, it's not even yards. I don't even know if it's always losing yards as much as it is you have your initial 3, finish and get 2 more. Right. Or stay at 3 because you cut outside. Like, you're hurting your yards per carry, and it's ultimately hurting the offense. Like, just don't give those extra up. Even though you're not technically giving up yards or losing yards, just finish the run. And he's done that. He's shown that ability on short yardage situations. 3rd and 1's getting a first down because he runs to the line. Treat it that way every single time, and then those big runs are going to come. That's how I view it, at least.
That's exactly it. I mean, and Baylor needs more of those 4 or 5 yard carries than they do 70-yard carries. That's just like, they need more of those. And so if you're changing those 5-yard runs into 1-yard runs, that's a problem. And that's something that has to get corrected. I think this week is a good opportunity for that. I also think it's a good week to see Michael Turner more. Just seeing his power, his frame, his physicality, very much a one-cut runner. At this point, Joseph Dodd's thick frame, another guy that they could give carries to. I think that they're going to, I think Baylor, for better words, is going to test their young guys a little bit in the run game. And I think they should, because this is that kind of matchup again, where you're trying to instill confidence. You're trying to instill a belief. And so far this year, those guys haven't had a lot of high leverage carries, aside from Knighton at times, against Auburn and whatnot. But, actually having a lot of the success that I think they were thinking they were going to have in the offseason, I think coming into this season, and then realizing, oh man, facing 2 of the best run defenses we're going to face all year. Yeah. I think this gives you an opportunity to kind of gain some confidence for that young running back group behind Bryson Washington.
Yeah, and it goes back to the Samford game where you just left Bryson, you let the first string offense in there majority of the time. This is a game that you hope Bryson can go out in the first quarter and a half, have 10, 11 carries for 110 yards. I mean, realistically, that's possible. Like, he based on what they did last year and what Oklahoma State's giving up this year, that's very possible that he has that done pretty quick, and then you can lean on those other guys throughout. And now, if the game is close, that obviously changes things. But if he's rushing for 9 or 10 times for 100-plus yards, it's probably going the way you want it to go. He needs those numbers, though. Like, I think that you want to get Bryson his numbers. You want to get him his touches. without overdoing him in a situation like that. Because he's the leading rusher in the Big 12. It's just crazy to think, considering how he started off the season. But he has a chance to have a really special year like that. It could be a really big year as he finishes his out if Baylor's committing to the run. But this is a game. Get Bryson his early, then Caden. He realistically could break off a couple of really long runs and give you a lot of confidence and give a defense. Give Kansas State, give TCU a little bit more to think about that they haven't been able to showcase yet.
Right. And I think going into the year, it's that similar thing we talked about with no Dawson. How many carries could Bryson potentially get? And right now he is just getting all the carries.
Yeah.
Like
that might have been part of
them all.
That might have been part of the Arizona State deal too. They after the turnovers, I think that hurt him. But who knows? He might have only been anticipating getting 20 carries in that game because he's had so many through the beginning of the season.
Yeah, but like you said, they're going to have to feature him. I hope this is a game where he's got, it takes him like 15 carries to score 2 touchdowns, and then he doesn't have to play the rest of the way or something along those lines. Ideal. Yeah, because you really would like him to be able to rest a little bit going into K-State. And then, of course, the bye week. So next week, it's kind of just you give him as many carries as you need against K-State. Yeah. And then you get the bye week to rest up. But I do hope the young guys get carries. We just need to see more from them. We really do. They need to get better. They need it,
yeah.
Yeah,
absolutely.
They need to get better and get some confidence. As far as the pass game goes, I know you mentioned you're not worried about it, and that's fine. I'm not too worried about it either, but I do think there is some level of, this is kind of a get right spot for a few guys because I do think in the Arizona State game, they left a lot of meat on the bone with the turnovers. Yeah. And so I do think there's going to be a little bit of, all right, let's make up for that this week.
Truly, the last 2 games, Sanford and Arizona State.
True. Sanford, a lot of mistakes, a lot of just, yeah, you're right. They did leave some stuff on the table there as well. So I do think there is some of like, hey man, you got to just get back to being efficient, being on track and not necessarily, you don't have to put up, 400 yards passing. That doesn't matter for this game, but being accurate. And then when these receivers catch the football, being efficient with your touches and getting good yardage and creating yards after catch, taking care of the football. But I do think there is some efficiency stuff that I would like to see kind of bounce back going into this game.
Yeah, it is. And it's also a place for a guy like Ashton Hawkins to come back. Josh Cameron, I don't think he's going to have to reform his confidence, but I think there's that. He's probably wanting to get the freaking football.
Oh, yeah.
He's wanting the football. Ashton's probably wanting the football. And I think you get him to. I think that this is an opportunity to say, "Hey, we're going to scheme some stuff for you to get the ball in your hands, to get that sour taste out of your mouth." Because that is honestly that's critical. You don't want Josh going into the Kansas State game and the TCU game with the last thing that he did offensively was fumbling the football and having those issues. And same for Ashton, like 1 catch for -1 yards against Arizona State, where I thought he was going to be showcased in that game in the screen game. They ran the screens, they just didn't run them to Ashton except for 1 time. I think both of those guys are due for a big game because of those reasons, different reasons, but because of those reasons. And if you go back to the SMU game, they were both over 100 yards and were linchpins for that offense. So Oklahoma State is not going to set up and just take something away from Baylor. Baylor should be able to do what they want to do in this game offensively. I think they need to run it, but I'm with you. I think they also need to get guys like that involved, get Sawyer into a rhythm, and then get him out of the game if it's possible.
Yep.
I mean, that's true. I mean, truly, we talked about in the Sanford game. This might be a game for Walker White and Nate Bennett to get some run, and I'm, I hope for that. Like, I want to see those guys more than anything, especially in that type of environment. You're not at home. It is a Big 12 school, and get a little taste of what they have.
So on the defensive side for the Bears, I think a lot of people are thinking that this is going to be that last week was kind of a mirage or a little bit fraudulent or, yeah, but what about Auburn and SMU and what they did to the Baylor defense? And I think that the main concept here is probably correct. I think this defense does have a lot of flaws. Like, I think they are going to get exposed at times, and good offenses are going to be a problem for them. It's going to happen. But I do think they took a step forward last week. And I do think that there could be a turning of the corner of going from, let's just be honest, like what looked like it was going to be, one of the worst defenses in the Big 12, like a bottom quarter defense to, I think maybe turn the corner and potentially being more like an average defense in the Big 12, which
as we almost expected.
Yeah, that's what we expected. And I think that could be a trend that continues, but it has to continue this weekend specifically because, again, this is the worst offense they're going to face the rest of the season.
Yeah, I mean, and that's what we're getting back to is in that Auburn game. I mean, truly, it was a perfect storm of sorts. You had a really good, experienced offensive line. You went in that already banged up a little bit on your defensive line, and then you lose Jackie Marshall immediately. And we saw last week against Arizona State against a pretty good rushing offense. Jackie has the ability to change a game plan for an offensive line. He lined up in a place that he's never in his career really lined up at, and he made plays. And I truly believe that if the depth holds up on the defensive line, they basically have 4 guys that they're playing right now. They're going to shift into some peso in situations where it limits their reps. But if Cooper Lands comes back and those other 3 guys, Devontae Tisano, Jackie Marshall, DK Kalu, like if those guys are healthy and playing the way that they did last week against Arizona State, that's going to take this defense to another level. But then you worry about the depth. You worry about the depth now at linebacker. Carl Williams and the depth at safety. Like that's the biggest question mark now for me is what happens when you start having to bring in guys for depth? What happens when Carl Williams gets his first snaps after being back? Does he give up another blown coverage? Like this defense has the ability to be average this year or maybe roughly above average depending on who they're playing. And that could set this team up for a lot of success down the stretch. But I think it does start. I think it starts on the defensive line, and this should be an opportunity for this defensive line to have a really good game. And maybe it's, Adonis Freelo that gets more snaps in this game versus last week. Samu getting more snaps in spots. And Dave Aranda mentioned that nose tackle position specifically. They've got to get better in those spots, and you hope that means that they're coming along and we're going to start playing them more because it would help the defensive line. But as a whole, they've done decently well against the run. You take away that 40-yard carry. I know you can't just eliminate things out of the box score, but the 40-yard carry late in the SMU game, and Baylor's run defense has been pretty good. And that's against SMU with a light load on the defensive line because of all the injuries. I'm optimistic about this team defense not being what we thought it was against Auburn and what we saw in that game. So, yeah, I'm with you. Like I think they did take a step forward.
I think they're still flawed, and I do think the Auburn
absolutely.
game, again, it's one of those things where they chose to, not give up a lot through the air. They made that decision. Dave Aranda mentioned they made that decision. So I think that there's still flaws there for sure. I do think this is a nice week because they're not facing a very mobile quarterback, which that has been a problem for them in the early going.
Beneficial.
That's pretty beneficial to the defensive line. I do think, going back to last year, they played 5 guys on the defensive line primarily. That's kind of how their rotation lined up. And so the more that I think about this, the more that I'm just like, man, if Adonis could just sustain some drives and sustain some snaps and give them a 5th guy, that would be just massive for them because you can shift him on the interior of a peso package. You can play him at nose tackle in their normal base down sets. But they really do need a 5th guy to emerge. Like if you look at it all and just say, going forward, can everyone stay healthy? Probably not. Like you're going to need another guy. You're probably going to need another guy to absorb reps when guys are getting tired in certain situations. It is nice that they can play their 2 edges a lot more. Kyler Jordan played a little bit last week too. So you got some veteran guys as well that you can mix in. But I think having an Adonis or a Samu emerge a little bit more would be nice. Samu came in and was there on the 4th and 1 and helped get that
package
stop
situation. Yeah.
His power, his strength, his size was huge. Like him and Jackie just blew up that play. And so I think that getting him for at least those type of situations would be nice. But I think having Adonis actually being able to play a little bit of a role consistently would be good as well. And definitely would help this team take a step forward. You mentioned the linebacker position. I kind of hope that they get guys like Caleb Burns, JJ Evans, some reps in this game. They're really green, especially Caleb. Like you got to be able to get these guys on the field more and give them some reps because you're probably going to need at least one of them at some point this season. So this is a good opportunity for that. Same with a guy like Kamari and Morgan potentially up front. But yeah, I'm with you. It's I still have a lot of red flags. I think there's going to be a lot of games where it's going to be pick and choose your poison, and they're going to get just eaten up in one way or another, whether it's through the pass or on the ground. I just think that's coming. But I also think there are some matchups that I do think Baylor can compete and actually have a good defensive performance. And this is one of them that's a pretty big test for them because this is one of the few performances where you feel like Baylor could actually be dominant on defense, not just sufficient.
Yeah. And I'm curious too of which teams challenge them in the same ways that they've seen through those three games to begin the season. Obviously, we know what Auburn had at wide receiver. Arizona State had Jordan Tyson, which they limited him pretty well. Sam Levitt's legs really add to that. SMU is very balanced in what they do. They had a decent day against TCU as well. But, you face Oklahoma State. You have Kansas State, who has not shown the ability to throw the football much this year.
Or run. They haven't done any of
it. Really haven't. TCU, who's, again, going to be without their leading rusher this week against Arizona State. What are they going to do running the football?
Just going down the toughest test throwing the football. They haven't faced anything like that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I just, which team's going to be able to challenge them in both ways? And I don't know that we are going to see that again. Utah hasn't really shown that ability to, and you probably have one off the top of your head. I just can't really think about which one's going to do it.
I think Utah's a tough one because Utah is going to be more similar to Arizona State in the fact that they're going to win up front. It's just a matter of how badly do they win up front, right? And that's kind of the difference, because I know Dampier wasn't impressive. There's a chance Tech's defense is elite and that they're going to make a lot of teams. There's a chance, especially on the defensive line, that they actually are elite on the defense line. They spent there. So there's a possibility. And so I just wonder, because going into the year, it was Arizona State, Utah, and Auburn had the three best offensive lines that Baylor's going to face all year. And if you get dominated up front, then it makes everything else look better. It doesn't matter how bad Dampier is. But if you're losing up front, so they do challenge. They're going to challenge Baylor in similar ways to Arizona State, I think.
I trust Sam Levitt much more throwing the football downfield, even though they weren't a great field. Like, Dampier just has not seen it. And that was not just against Tech. That was in their other games as well. And I want to go back and watch the UCLA game. I just don't know, like, in general, who's going to do it to the same level that present all the challenges that Baylor face. I mean, nobody else is having a Jordan Tyson type of receiver. No one's going to have the depth that Auburn did. And even with SMU, that offensive scheme in general and Kevin Jennings' ability. I watched him against the TCU game. I went back and watched that this morning, and he was really impressive in that game. They didn't win the game, but he made throws against TCU that he wasn't making against Baylor. And I was really impressed by him. So I'm more curious looking at the outlook of when you mention what does Baylor pick and choose their poison. I don't know that there's the biggest thing to overcome in the rest of the games as there was. Like, if you say we're going to completely take away this from Arizona State, well, you're probably going to sacrifice some in the back end, and they did. Or we're going to take this away from Auburn, and they did take away the passing game, and they gave it all up in the run game. Which team can make them pay nearly as much? I'm with you. I think it's Utah and TCU are the two teams that can really make you pay on the opposite side. I don't know which one is going. I think I would probably lean towards TCU and their running game compared to Utah and their passing game, if you eliminate one of their strengths. So I'm just curious how Baylor's defense looks when they're not kind of having to play both sides of the coin for the majority of the game.
Yeah, I think a lot of it's going to come down to how physical can they play up front, because you're going to play a Cincinnati team that's going to run their quarterback and try to run right at you in a lot of situations. You're going to face a Houston team that wants to be physical with you up front as well. If you're not getting whooped up front, then you're probably going to have a lot of success against just about anyone except for maybe TCU, because again, there's levels to this, and so far Baylor hasn't played anyone that's going to challenge them throwing the football like TCU is. And we saw Kevin Jennings. I mean, he put together like the best first half you're ever going to see as a quarterback. In
some of his own doing, some of it not his doing. So
for sure, but that was a concern going the season. 250 is like you're cooking. You're not getting better than that.
Yeah.
Right. So we'll see on the TCU matchup going forward. But for this week against Oklahoma State, I think the expectation should be a very, very good performance on both sides of the ball, a stout defensive performance, a very good offensive performance. Some run game would be nice to see. So, Colt, as you look at this game and just kind of take a step back, what do you think? What's your prediction here? What's your score prediction? How much do you think Baylor's going to win by on the road in Stillwater?
Yeah, I've gone back and forth. I do think this is a game where Baylor gets out and then ultimately runs the victory. I think when I say that, meaning they're going to run their offense early and throwing the football, running the football, however they're going to get it, they're going to get it. But then if you get into the second quarter and you're up 2 scores, 3 scores, and then you might just see them running the football and being physical. And so I think it slows the overall game down. And I could ultimately see this being a 35-7 type of game because Baylor just slows it down so much. Now, if Oklahoma State figures out how to push Baylor defensively and that score can get up higher, I don't have the question marks about what their motivation is in this game. You mentioned to start this off, like what are they playing for? Like, are they playing for bowl game? I mean, realistically, it's still available to them, but no, they're not playing for Mike Gundy to a great extent. He's not there. But maybe they are playing for Mike Gundy in this game and they play with this energy. So all that's to say, I'll probably go with like a 42-10 type of score where Baylor gets out, scores quite a bit in the first half, and then runs the football a lot and slows down the game. I think truly Oklahoma State will probably go with the same type of game plan. Just like, let's just not get through it. That sounds bad, but like, I hope that Baylor's able to put their foot on their throat and make this a game like that. And if Baylor's focused, I think they will.
Yeah, I got Baylor winning this one 37-13. I think they're going to pull away a little bit. Oklahoma State will score a late touchdown, make it look a little closer than it is. But I think in general, something like a 4-score game sounds about right. That's about all I can predict right now for this Baylor team. I just frankly need to see something. Yeah. Like, I need to see more consistency. It honestly would not shock me if Baylor won this game like 48-10. Wouldn't shock me at all. Yeah. But I just can't predict that right now with the way that their offense has sputtered even against bad teams like Samford. I mean, it's just hard to predict that at this moment. So I think a 24-point win sounds about right, where they cover somewhat comfortably and they dominate throughout, but they maybe just don't quite hit on the same amount of explosives or don't quite, keep their foot on the gas pedal, which is something that kind of been commonplace so far.
And one thing we haven't seen from this team yet that it's maybe it comes, maybe it doesn't, but it's their ability to score without the offense. So special teams, interception, like that could change the ultimate final score of this game too. Sorry, you might be looking at 35-10, but they get a pick 6 late or a punt return for a touchdown late by, or not late by Josh Cameron. He didn't be out there that late, but you know what I'm saying? Like, it swings that game and makes it feel a little bit different. And they're able to pull off a 45-10 type win. But that's coming. I feel like Baylor's kind of been close to having some of these turnovers, breaking one on a kickoff return or a punt return. I mean, Josh and Colt have both been pretty good in the return game. Obviously, we know what Josh can do. That could be coming in this game. You never know. It breaks loose and you get up and you pop one like that to help separate.
And you got the blocked punt in the Samford game, which was a nice shift there, got you a quick score. So, a lot of things that could go right if Baylor really is able to take advantage of some things. If you're going to score a ton, if you're going to score in the 50s, you're going to need probably a special teams or a defensive touchdown or a really advantageous turnover for sure. Would likely be the case there. But overall, we both got Baylor win this game. Should be one where you're kind of getting a little revenge on what's happened in Stillwater a few times over the past years.
Hopefully, fingers crossed.
Yeah, Oklahoma State's taken it to Baylor a couple times. This would be a nice opportunity for Baylor to get a little redemption, a little revenge here in Stillwater on Saturday. But Colt and I will be back with our best bets to conclude this week. And of course, we'll have our preview Sunday night, Monday morning. So be sure to check that out as well. But thanks for listening. This has been the Bearcast on Sikkim365.com.
Join Sikkim 365 Premium on a $1 for 1 month trial to read our experts' notes and insights. Know about high school commits, off-season transfers, coaching staff changes, and so much more before the rest. Also, download the Sikkim 365 app on your iPhone today to get instant notifications of breaking news, read up on the latest inside info, easily interact with other Baylor fans on our forums, and get alerts for anything published by your favorite staff members.